Hello there.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Adam?
I'm good. Nice to meet you, Chris.
You too.
What should we talk about?
We can talk about anything you'd like.
Well, we can certainly include this, right?
That's the idea.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You've
What do
read
we
it.
indeed, yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That,
Have you been interviewed? Well, I guess everybody's interviewed by people who have not seen or read their work at some point or other.
it happens a lot.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. I get the question a lot, which leads me to suspect that's the case.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and where are you based?
I'm in California, Los Angeles area.
Got it. Very good. All right. Well, again, it's very nice to meet you and to have had the pleasure of reading this book. It was, it is called "The Future Was Now," and it centers um, the a certain year where just all these films popped up. Almost entirely in science fiction fantasy genre.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually
1980, 1982. What year? How old were you in 1982?
I was 13 in the summer of 1982.
Okay.
I was the perfect sweet spot for these movies.
Yeah, probably true. Maybe a little even young for a couple of them, though.
A couple, but my parents were just like, R rating, go for it.
Oh, yeah. But it doesn't necessarily mean you don't get scarred from some,
True,
'cause,
true.
in 1982, I would have been 18 or 19, depending on what part of the year. So I was a few years older. But they still, still had quite an impact. And I was
Yeah.
looking at them, and there was like of the eight your book um brings up, grapples with. There's maybe one, maybe two. I know for sure one movie I didn't see in the movie theater when it came out. Maybe the second one I saw on videotape. I'm not positive. I definitely did not see Tron when it
Okay.
came out. And I'm not sure about the Road Warrior. I
Okay.
can't remember how I was first exposed, but I can remember every other movie and who I was with, where I saw it, very clearly.
See, that's sort of the sense memory aspect that I'm trying to evoke with this book. It's like
Right.
it's a really these are really the 80s for a
Uh,
certain generation, very nostalgic. And I'm hoping that, these movies, even if you're not a fan of all of them, even if you haven't seen all of them, that they trigger something in you. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, even though I was a few years older and remain so, um, um, these are movies that also kind of were my real generation of movies, this period of the 80s, because even though I was around in the 70s and because um there wasn't really a genre of any serious nature for children before the 80s. There was like, the occasional Disney movie
Yeah.
would come out every so often. You generally went to see what your parents went to see.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there was Mel Brooks finally. There were comedies, Woody Allen movie, early Woody Allen or Mel Brooks, James Bond movies, Pink Panther movies. These are what I remember a bit younger, closer to the age you were in 1982.
Yeah.
But there was no real, like, I mean, obviously that all changed completely. Now
Yeah.
it's harder to find adult movies
Right.
in the mainstream anyway. So, this really was a bunch of movies that really like spoke to me. I remember just how excited I was about some of these movies coming out. So,
Yeah. I don't know, people say about like rock bands and music, like your favorite music will always be the music that you responded to when you were like 15 or 16.
Sure.
And I sort of feel like the same thing exists for movies.
Hmm.
And I like, this one sort of glorious summer in 1982, like I said, I was 13, but like I wonder if I'm inflating how good that summer was because of my age, or if it really was this amazing summer lineup. You know what I mean? It's like
Sure.
if I looked at the 8 movies, I couldn't find 8 movies that I wanted to see this summer. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? There may
Yeah.
be 3 or 4 tops.
Well, I grew up in New York, and though I grew up in Queens, my father worked in magazine publishing in Manhattan, and he was invited to like many premieres.
Yeah,
So I remember going to see E.T. On a weekend. It was a weekend, I believe. It was like an early. They just had so many of them that I guess some of them were bled into the Saturday or something like that. Because I remember going in the daytime with my father to see E.T. and being so excited. And the same was true with Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan. I remember going to like the premiere, the nearest premiere at whatever theater it was, and I remember actually seeing Leonard Nimoy on the aisle, a couple of rows down,
that's
and
cool.
approaching him and his publicist, kind of shooing me away.
That's fantastic.
Fuck.
You're right.
And and the thing.
Yeah,
And going to the premiere of that with my parents, or at least a preview of that.
yeah.
Eh, so those are my memories of those in particular, and yeah, there's a lot of associations with this particular bunch of movies that you brought that your book takes on. So there's these 8 movies that you center the book on, and I'm just wondering, how did this thing come about? How did it how did you decide, okay, I think this is worthy of a book?
Yeah, so about 3 years ago, I was writing an article for Esquire about the day, I think it was June 25th, 1982, the day that Blade Runner and The Thing both opened. So it was an article about, these two great sci-fi movies open on the same day. Um, and sort of the weird thing about that um, is that both of them were disappointments at the time.
Right.
Blade Runner did okay at the box office, but it wasn't Blade Runner. You know what I mean? Like
Amazing. Right.
the reviews were like pretty savage. Um, and it sort of like broke even. And if you asked people on the street now if Blade Runner was a blockbuster when it came out, they'd say yes, but it wasn't. And The Thing fared even worse. I mean, that movie was reviled, and it's probably my favorite of the 8 films of that I talk about in the book, and it was probably the most critically, just dogpiled on when it came out. And it was just a real disappointment. And it really sort of ruined or, put, it sort of paralyzed John Carpenter's career for a while. After a really great run of movies, including Halloween and Escape from New York, and
Right.
so anyway, that's how the story, that's how the idea began. The more I sort of looked around, because of that article, uh, at the other movies that came out that summer, I was like, wow, this is really a very sci-fi heavy summer. And I sort of lined them up and was like, these 8 movies all came out within 8 weeks of one another. It's like this 8 week
Yeah.
window.
Right.
And I sort of thought about why that was. And there's sort of like the conventional wisdom in Hollywood is that, like if you want to know why a certain, boom in a certain genre of movies is happening, look 5 years earlier, right? Because
Oh, I
that's
can do that math.
yeah, and you can do that math exactly.
I know a movie came out
77,
5 years before.
a very big sci-fi movie came out
Yeah,
in
that's right.
1977. So, these are the spawn of Star Wars, and it's all the studios trying to play catch up, and sort of trying to jump on the bandwagon, and some succeed and some fail. The ones that succeed and the ones that fail aren't the ones you expect necessarily, and the ones we remember as being the most influential aren't necessarily the biggest hits. It's just an interesting sort of game.
It is, right. It's a great way. Also, like I just picked up another book which, I'm going to get to, which is a very different, subject matter. It's this Philip Lopate, who's a journalist for many, many
Yeah,
years, and an author. He has a new book about his experience, all these essays he wrote about, and about art, more on the art films, and art house movies. But interestingly, how much time, at some distance in time, um really is when you get the more accurate gauge about a movie, not like the first months. I mean, obviously you can see a blockbuster, but let's face it, any Marvel movie is going to do back gangbusters the first month, right? The first two
yeah,
weekends are going to be like blowout, do these enormous numbers. The quality and the impact on the culture has nothing to do with that.
yeah, 100%. All you have to do is really go back and look at like the best picture winners from any, like for the last 30 years. It's like,
Right.
some of them are just like head scratchers, like what
Yeah.
were we thinking,
Right.
and some of them make sense. So it's like that. It's like, it's not always what you think it's going to be.
Yeah. Right. Well, I will say one outlier would probably be in 1979, which is Alien, which I think really had an impact also. But again, it doesn't fit into, unfortunately, the rest of the formula so comfortably.
Yes, but the alien connection is there because Ridley
Well, sure.
Scott
Right.
directed Alien. It's sort of like, in a way, like a test case for his next sci-fi
As
movie.
I guess as was the first Star Trek a motion picture, right?
Right.
I found that actually, in terms of your book, that story to be maybe for me the most interesting.
Oh, really? That's good to hear.
Yes, just its journey from and how all the challenges of, the demand was kind of there. People wanted more, but the studio and the cast and the writers, there was a lot of drama going on with that.
Yeah, and then the whole, with the sequel of Star Trek Two, the whole Spock situation, right? Like,
Right. Yes.
you mentioned seeing him at the premiere.
Yeah.
He was the fate of Spock, which was a rumor, that had trickled out of the studio lot, rumors that he was going to be killed off in the second
Hmm.
movie, became like a big. It's hard to wrap your head around it now, but it actually became like a really big, sort of like cultural deal. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
Johnny Carson
Mhm.
joked about it, and
Right. Yeah. 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 Sure.
people really cared.
Right.
Uh, the studio got death threats. Don't kill off Spock, or we'll kill off you. That sort of thing. It was kind of amazing.
Yeah. I do vaguely remember it from my childhood.
Yeah.
And but I also very have a much sharper memory of how um, bored to tears I was at that screening of, um, Star Trek: A Motion Picture, and
That's what I was
disappointed.
going to ask you. Like, are you? Because it sounds like you like Star Trek movies. Are you? What are your feelings about one and two?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to admit to being kind of in the along with I thought two was just had so much more of a connection to the series, and also realized, let's take these characters that we're reintroducing. It's a reunion, not among the characters, but the characters with us. And
Hmm.
I think they kind of got slighted in the first movie. It was undersold. It should have been the first half of the movie should have just been those close-ups of, and maybe they did even were there, but it was kind of forgettable.
Yeah.
Whereas for some reason, I think they got the tone of Wrath of Khan just right, and they kind of were able to remember that going forward, even with some of the
Yeah.
sequels might have been weaker than others. But I think they realized finally what they had there with this
Yeah.
cast.
Agreed.
And it's also hard to imagine, given that, William Shatner is in his 90s now, just how young he was in that first,
I know.
still in that first movie.
Yeah. Absolutely.
An amazing story. But the other connections that I have, which I'll share with you, just are that I was a summer camp counselor in that summer too. Or maybe it was '83, and maybe it was still in theaters or something, because I we my co-staff and we took our bunk on a bunk night, on a bunk night out to see Blade Runner, and
Oh, wow.
really got in trouble because these were young kids. They were like 11, and the parents, there was an uproar, and the director really reamed us out about how I didn't even realize, like, and it didn't even occur to me, like, oh my God, this is, how violent and this disturbing this might be to these kids. I was just like, pretty like blown away by what I was watching,
Yeah.
and kind of didn't even take into it. That's how young I was. I was
Well,
still
you might have gotten into trouble, but you were clearly their favorite counselor because that's a pretty formative experience. At
they have
11,
they have that memory, true,
yeah.
whether or not they are scarred from it or not, but they can at least have a good story to tell how, their weirdo camp counselors took them to see Blade Runner in Vermont somewhere. Might have been, yeah, I can't remember. If it was it could have been 83, it might have been a drive-in even, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And then I also did take this young kid who I was still pretty young myself. I was a teenager when Poltergeist. And I remember taking this young friend. He was like a really sophisticated, but he was really kind of freaked out a little bit by this how scary Poltergeist was at the time. We look at it now and
Yeah.
it's barely registers, but back then it was pretty creepy movie.
I agree. I think, that's a movie that feels like it's gotten softer with age, but
Yeah,
at the time, I remember seeing it in the theater and being really freaked out by it. Like, really, I got nightmares from it.
you
Uh,
did.
yeah, for sure. I mean, for some reason, the tree outside the window and the lightning thing when he's counting down, you
Mm,
was really scary to me. And of course, like now it's just terrible effects, but at the time, when the guy rips his face off in the mirror, one of the paranormal scientist guys, um, that really freaked me out. Now it just looks so phony. But yeah, that movie at the time really, really got to me. The one I would say The Thing is probably the scariest movie out of the bunch, but I
yeah.
don't think I think that's the one movie I did not see in theaters at the time. I think I saw it a couple years later on VHS at a friend's house. Um, so I think I was, a little bit more in a better position to handle it than I would have been at 12. But that's a for my money, that's really that movie's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I remember revisiting it not that long ago, coincidentally, well before I had the chance to read your book, which again is called The Future Was Now, Mad Men, Mavericks, and the Epic Sci-Fi Summer of 1982. Available where books are sold. It's being published by Flatiron. Great company, by the way, over the
Yeah,
years.
yeah, I did. I actually wrote my last book with them, and
Oh,
and it was about the making of Caddyshack, and just sort of that late '70s, early '80s revolution in comedy with Saturday Night Live and Second City,
yeah.
and that
National
whole thing.
Lampoon, right? Yeah.
National Lampoon was a big part of it. So it was I was so sort of impressed with how that experience was with the publisher that it felt like the right home for this one as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's they seem to really get the what kind of book this is trying to be. That it's not just that it's trying to have something to say about these movies, not just, hey, isn't it cool that these 8 movies all came out the same summer?
Right, celebrating their box office or what have
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up right outside of Boston.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Which
So
name, which town?
in Needham.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So saw all of these movies at the Dedham Showcase Cinema.
Yeah. I lived in Boston for a few years in the 80s, but it was interestingly probably about a year after this. I moved there in 83,
Mhm.
and there were so many great movie theaters in the Boston and in Cambridge and the whole area, I have to say.
Absolutely.
You know, not that New York was so bad
Right.
back then,
Right. New York's
especially.
got a few good ones too.
Yeah. Is this your wheelhouse, or do you see yourself like moving in a are you wanting to move in a different direction? Do you think about maybe what you might be interested in writing about next? Or do you feel like
Um,
just continue with your film journalism and that the next story will present itself organically?
yeah, I mean, I don't know what the next thing is yet, but I suspect it would be something along these lines. I'm sort of my career has been as a film reporter, a film editor, a film
I
critic.
see.
So yeah, I mean, these sorts of stories, finding, to me, the sort of interesting subjects are the ones that um use movies as sort of like a prism to explore something bigger that's going on, either in
Yeah.
the industry or the culture. So it's a matter of finding the right subject, but that's what I'm interested in. A little bit of history, a little bit of movies, how they wed together. That's where I'm interested.
Mm. Yeah, of course. I mean, um, that's why we read about the books too, because we kind of have want to get a better grip on the time and the culture and how what can we relate to back in 1982,
Yeah.
like to today. Have times changed that much, and would these movies be able to come out today? And these are the questions. Um, well, again, the book is called The Future Was Now. Tell me how you came up with that title.
I don't really know. It just sort of
No, it
happened.
it
It
came
just
to you in a
it,
dream, did it?
it came to me in a dream. No, I probably I don't I wish I had a better answer, but I honestly I sat down, started writing, and that phrase came out, and I was like, yeah, that's catchy. Let's go for it.
Interesting. Well, I've been lucky to have on a couple of people from some of these movies on this podcast over the years, and um, the author of Blade Runner has been on here.
The screenwriter,
Yes, the screenwriter.
uh-huh,
Um, and
Hampton Fanton.
Hampton has been on this. Yeah, and in fact, I was trying to reach out to him recently because I'm working with the Woodstock Film Festival, and but he's pretty venerable at this point,
Oh, sure.
and so I didn't get a reply, but I was trying to start to put together maybe a possible event for the fall. But, he has an incredible background in history, as you may know, but
Yeah.
he's kind of, I'm sure, kind of trying to retire, probably
Yeah,
for
right.
most at this late point. But yeah, Hampton is on, and I'm sure there's got to be one or two other people that I've had on from here. Lord knows I've tried, I'm
Yeah.
sure, to get some more of these folks on here. But yeah, Spielberg didn't get back to me, sadly.
Yeah, I would say Ridley Scott and Oliver Stone are both really, really great interviews.
Yeah,
I would definitely recommend speaking with both of them if you get the chance. They're both just so smart, and
right,
we've been through so much, and in this business, and they're past the point of being, uh, sort of politically correct about the
right.
ups and
Yes,
downs of their career. They don't really give a shit anymore about that. So
right.
they make for entertaining interviews.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, no, I've met Stone and got to meet him and chat with him a bit, and he was very very nice and warm, I thought, because I just wanted to let him know how, especially a couple of his earlier films really had an impact on me as a young guy going through discovering cinema on my own, aside from my parents,
Hmm.
and what movies they were watching and how they inspired me. Where did you first discover your love of film?
I would say my parents as well. We
They were really into cinema.
Yeah, yeah, and they would take my brother and I to what they were seeing. It wasn't like, we're going to go see Dog Day Afternoon. You guys go see the Apple Dumpling Gang. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah. That's
we're going to see Dog Day Afternoon. You'll hear some
yeah.
spicy language. You can
Okay.
hear it, just don't repeat it.
Also, you grew up maybe even a little later, but right in the sort of in the um crux of, well, not crux isn't the right word, but right in the middle of the boom for VHS, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
We were a little late. I remember we were a little late for two things. One was the VHS, which I would usually have to go over to a friend's house to watch
right.
movies.
Yeah.
And one of them had beta, which was interesting. And the other one was MTV. It didn't come to our town until very, very late. So
Interesting.
that was one of those things that, like, if you went to like visit cousins, you just park yourself in front of the TV for 3 days and like watch music videos because it was such a big deal. And
Right.
again, it's like that's nostalgia and that's like a very specific time.
I
Um,
think you have your next book,
yeah, right.
Chris. I wanted my
Right.
MTV.
Things I watched at other people's houses.
That's true,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, we were a little late with that whole thing, and then my dad really just embraced it. You know, he
Yeah.
really got into it, and so we were watching a lot of movies back when I was growing up too. Had an enormous impact on me.
Yeah.
Um, well, thank you. And I mean, I don't know if we hit all the points, but it was, if there's anything, you feel like I've left out, please let's discuss it because
No, I mean, look, I think that, people will probably get the impression, and I think you've
right.
nailed it, that this is a book about 8 movies that came out in one 8 week period in the summer of '82. They
Yeah.
were a reaction to Star Wars. The business was changing. And it's really sort of a blueprint for where movies were headed. It
Right.
was
Yeah.
the birth of the blockbuster, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. It's a real case study of of this one summer, which, will, you know, illustrate just how the whole times have changed from character oriented films to really more about story and about plot and action and but interestingly enough, these films kind of still, most of these that you highlight had a lot of heart,
right.
still,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
It's interesting. Like you mentioned Alien earlier, and a lot
Hmm.
of people who come to Alien later, um, they find the movie amazingly slow. And it's funny that when it came out, it wasn't slow at all. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, right.
movies have changed.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think
sure.
even like very sort of like your run of the mill sort of like summer movie um, was in a way so much better uh, back then than a lot of what we're getting now. I think that there are still great movies that are being made, even tentpole movies, like, for example, the Mission Impossible movies, the Marvel movies, even though I'm not a fan of them, are really well made. But it's amazing to go back and look at something like The Thing,
Right.
uh, made by John Carpenter, and it's just a masterclass in just paranoia and pacing and character.
And
Um,
tension and
and
suspense and
and it's
yeah.
like, it was like the 18th highest grossing film of that year, but like it should have been. Now it would be, it'd probably be nominated for Oscars now. I mean, it's just that good,
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just I feel like this is sort of a look back at a in a way a bit of a golden age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure. Yes. Well, the author is Chris Nashawaty. Did I pronounce it right?
Yeah, Nashawaty. Yep.
Nashawaty. And the book again is called The Future Was Now. Currently available where books are sold or downloaded or heard in some cases. I don't suppose you're doing an audio.
We are doing an audiobook,
You
but
are. And
I'm
are you
I'm
reading?
personally not doing it. But yes,
No?
we are doing one.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Who would be your like do you know who's going to read it?
No, but I would. I mean, if you're asking who my dream is, which I think is what,
Yeah, that was my
I
question.
mean, how could you ask for more than Shatner, right?
It's a good choice.
The
That's a
future was now. It would be great.
Oh, funny. Well, yeah. And I wish you much success with the book, and I hope that we can do this again. When even if it's for an article, let me know.
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
stay in touch. I'll put my email down because I don't know if you know Josh Karp.
Yeah, Josh is great. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean among other, but he's like somebody I just invite him on all the time.
yeah,
We
he's
have a
terrific.
great
I'm
we
a
have a
big fan
great
of his.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And you guys obviously have written for some of the same outlets, I'm assuming. So
Yep.
I'd love to bring it back, and I appreciate your coming on.
Well, thank you, Adam. I appreciate it.
Future is now. I will hold off on this, of course, until the summer.
Yeah,
Right? It's coming out in July.
July 30th, I believe.
Okay, so maybe, as soon as it's available, I'll post this because the only reason I was rushing to get you on here was because I didn't want to, I read it when it came.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have waited, but I wanted to read it and then,
No, it's fine. This is good. This is good.
and then I wanted to talk to you while it was still relatively fresh in my mind.
Yeah, it's less work that you have to do down the road.
There you go. And now I'll have a happy surprise when I don't have to think about, an episode in early August or something.
Right, exactly.
All right. Well, yeah, pleasure to meet you. Thank you for putting up with me, and I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for your interest.
All right, here I'm gonna put my just so you have it.
Yeah.
I'll put my email here.
Oh, in the chat?
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty straightforward. I didn't mistype it.
All right.
Did
Got
I
it.
get it? Did I get it in there?
Yep. Adam at filmwax.com.
That's it.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. So have a good rest of your day.
Okay, man. Take it easy. Thanks
You too.
again.
Thank
Bye bye.
you. Bye bye.